no crutches, no helpers, no pre-measuring. Now, the one thing we agree on, by the way, is that, for example, we might say that we're going to agree to make the drawing the same height. You and I are going to put up two different drawings, and you're going to work site size, and I'm going to work not site size. We still can draw the thing in the site size location on the floor, so it would appear to be the same size as, say, the cast or the portrait that we're doing. And so you'll have this appearance of similarity of size. Well, that to me is the only value of site size now. You can actually compare. And that's actually an explanation Dan will get to us as well. Since you can easily see that this ain't that. And the problem, of course, is not already expressed. But the real big problem is that because drawings and the art itself is a relational art, the beauty of things is not in themselves, but in the way they relate to other things. I say in themselves, for example, a curve and the way it relates to another curve that I referred to before, the play of those two things is where the beauty comes from in a picture. The skill is not in matching one, matching the other. The skill is learning to see how things play in relationship to each other, and to learn to find that music. And that music applies in color and values and light effects. It applies in shape, in curves and straight lines. There's no end to the application. And it applies actually in terms of human habits in relation to each other. But so there's no mechanical photographic accuracy that will help you in any kind of a way there, even if that were possible through site size, which it isn't actually. I don't know that I want to go on this endlessly, but if you will take a look at the Varg method as described in a couple different places, I'm trying to remember which ones, one of them might be in that book on Varg, you'll see that the drawing is not even facing the viewer, which means that the drawing, when you get all done, and then you hang it on the wall, well, the viewer will walk up. I said the viewer. Let me say this again. The drawing, it will not be fully facing the artist, the way it's set up there, which means that he'll draw a distorted drawing. He'll always make the drawing too wide. If he's actually doing it by sight. If he's actually using a sight thing. The sight thing is a deception. It's not being done by sight. It's being done by measurement. And I suggest to somebody who really wants to be more accurate, just take a photograph and trace it. And then do your thing to it. You'll be way more accurate and waste time. You're not even really learning relationships and find out where the music is and think it. So that's, and I'm not being sarcastic when I say that. I mean, just stop wasting time. So the idea of transferring angles and transferring, not having to learn to see not having learned to see relationships is a huge problem. And I love the summary that Aang gives to what you must do to draw with this. Is you have to have an idea of a thing fixed in your mind and eye, or you'll be pushing shapes around all day long. Now, he's just talking about shapes. Admittedly, he's talking about shapes, right? But that's a preconceived idea of the shape, right? It's not a borrowed, measured thing that you then transfer over to your painting, and then glue it on there, and then do another one and glue it on there, which is the site size modus operandi. Doesn't mean you can't draw a whole big shape, and then, by transferring all these things, and look at that and see if it actually transfers. But you're so lost in the object is the painting. The object is not the painting. The object isn't the painting. The painting is the set of those performers in there in relation to each other. They're making a song, right? It's the ensemble of a guy like, in the conversation about a guy like Velasquez. It's the thing as a whole. And your job is actually to learn to see the thing as a whole. Which takes me to another question. And I think I'm going to stop at that one. Should a person, I won't stop at it because the rest of the question was, should a person who wants to paint impressionistically even bother to learn, even bother with site size? Well, obviously I think I'm trying to tell you that I think that site size is actually a problem. Bob Hunter said that to me, Robert Douglas Hunter. He said, don't you think his daughter, I think he maybe taught her to do site size, and he says, don't you think at least beginners ought to? So I was really surprised because, first of all, because he didn't look like he was doing it in his work in any rigorous way. And in my conversations with him, and watching his work outdoors, for example, I know he didn't do it out there. So it's an interesting question where people say they need site size and why they think they need and why they think they don't. But since it's an art of relation, and so we know this is an art of relation, then why wouldn't we teach the basic discipline of studying relationships in the angle, get a concept of the relationship, and learn to carry that up to the fifth floor, as Duval would say, where the more advanced students were carry up that concept, have learned a set of relationships, which is the value of the thing anyway, and carry that upstairs is not that hard to do. So, but so let's jump off of that one, because that whole idea of preconceiving is kind of significant one. And by the way, Kevin, respond to that. I think I left you a note online, and to others who want to read that. So respond to that if you want to, or ask me to be more specific about some aspect of it. You push me on it. But then one came in from Margie. And Margie's in a very advanced state of development, and really, really good at hitting notes and doing relationships and all those things. But she's been struggling with the idea of what makes a finish in that question that Degas brings up. You know, when you've dotted all the T's and crossed all the I's, in other words, when you've painted all the eyelashes and the fingernails and you can't think of anything else to do, is that when you're done? And Degas said, of course, that's silly, because having done that, you've just basically reset the field that you're actually working from. If you just copy nature, you're not doing anything of significance that has to do with painting. It's just, you know you're done when everything's in harmony. And I think that's one of the things that Baron Grove is actually saying when he says to you that you need to, and I think Whistler said it very similarly. He said that your painting needs to be all in order. Even if you're only halfway to the finish, your picture needs to be all in order so that somebody could sell it and you happen to drop dead. Your wife and starving kids. Or in the case of Whistler, he said if they when they come to arrest you, maybe you should have your painting in order. Well, that order is frankly, it's visual order. It's the order visual. It has to look like it's all in a piece. For all the elements that are there, all the ones related to it are there, and the song is there, you know? And so Degas talks harmony. He talks a musical term, harmony. Well, it's got nothing to do with realism and modeling up things and that sort of stuff. It's got a very different conversation going on. So I enjoyed this question. What is that you're talking about? So you'll know when you're finished with the painting. I like Bragman's comment once. He said somebody told him when he was a student, he said, so your job is to paint the picture, somebody else's job is to come and drag you away before you ruin it. And he used to say that you can tell it's finished. You can tell when a picture is finished. You may as well just throw it away. The model being that finish for its own sake is meaningless. Finish. What is that? What is that? I think it's useful to say that finish is, in the sense of highly movable, it's just a matter of style. And you can look through the whole history of painting, and the finish idea doesn't even seem to exist in the same way from one person to the next. And it certainly never comes to that place, which we struggle with as students, of doing it more like and more like and more like until it's exactly like, photographically like, as it were, what's sitting in front of us. It's never been about that. But to Impressionists, it's even more so not about that. And I say it this way, because Impressionists have looked at nature and he said, now where's the music? He's looking at this ensemble in front of him. He's seeing this light glow here and this transparent lostness back there, and he's seeing this play of patterns as they go like this across the page. And he's looking and he's looking and he's thinking, I think I see what he's advising. And an Impressionist actually will then proceed to go right directly for that. And he'll be finished when he's got it. It has its own internal harmonies, all of which will be true, by the way. I mean, Boston School paintings are really, really wonderful examples of people who produce terrific. I mean, I think we're in a great place to their art. And I'm going to tell you this, I think it's Benson as much as he can. And it's coming from somebody like me who doesn't put a lot of work out that's that open and, as it were, unfinished. But the music that the guy makes is the music of art. It's the music that helps define the very word aesthetic. You know, he's making that music and he makes it more frequently. You know, in my view, he's making it more frequently than Gerald. And Gerald, by the way, is a great designer, but it's hard to look at his pictures and think, I just gotta have that. Unless your head is focused on noodling and old style composition in that pre-Rome sense of that word. You know, but there's so many pictures done by the Boston School guys where you just sit there with your mouth just falling open just a bit. I like to use that expression, which is the point. The guys saw what the value, what the beauty was. They went and got the beauty, and they didn't get anything else. They didn't put time into them thinking they had some moral obligation to noodle up all the eyelashes and all this stuff until you lost your point, your aesthetic point, and literally became a literalist, right? You know, suddenly you've got the girl sitting there, which the music is gone. I mean, like, what the heck is that? What have you just done? So am I arguing for sloppy painting or poor drawing? I mean, no, you don't have to. I mean, not even a little bit. You'd be creating a straw man with that approach. So I'm not even a little bit. You need to be able to be a good impressionist. You need to be able to draw better than most people, than noodlers, for example. Paxton, to my mind, and Gamble did say this, Paxton, he said, told him once, he said, I can draw as accurately as anyone, possibly in history, but I'm not a draftsman. You can't do the Boston School kind of painting without having the draftsman mindset. And that's a question for another time, but I'm suggesting that you must be able to draw to do impressionism well. And but you must also have the brain to know when to do it and when not to do it, or that's to say, when you're in a position that it's the point that's being made in that area is a drawing point, and they're all over the place, by the way. Drawing points are being made in ways that most people don't think of. So I think I need to wrap this one up, but so the finish, when you know you're where you want to be. Now, so that's the question: have you preconceived? Have you stood there and looked at the painting, looked at nature in front of you, without your planners? And as an impressionist, that's your job. Your first job is to sit there and look at the lens about it, just look there and see where the beauty lies. And then your job is, of course, to capture that and to learn to be efficient at getting right to the point. Well, it's an all over the place at once problem, obviously. It's not, you can't stop at the top and work to the bottom. You have to be all over the place at once. You have to be doing all the things at once. You have to be doing chroma, light effects, shape, size, proportion, location on the page, all these things at once. And you have to be constantly watching for the plating of those parts as the picture is closed, especially at the start. As you close out that picture, which I try to do the first day, you try to cover the canvas in the first day. But I don't cover it mindlessly. I cover it so I can actually say, yeah, that's what I meant. Now let me really bring it. And we'll spend the next hours bringing it. But bringing it, knowing the name of what you're bringing is the hugest thing. So in a sense, what you're making is a summary statement at the start. So that you'll know you're not going to go past that to finish. Your finish doesn't suddenly change. If your painting change, of course, it's going to change course. But all of a sudden, now you're in a place where your job is to bring it home. Remember what was the reason you came, right? So I noticed that was the biggest question. I'm going to talk about two other points that Margie brings up on another one because they're not, they come out of that, but I'll talk about those on the next one. So, by the way, so if you want to make a comment, you have the area down below on this. Sometimes it shows up on the side. I'm not sure quite how it works. You can do that, or you can email me, or send something to my to my Instagram or whatever else is out there. But don't hesitate to do so. I look forward to responding. And thank you. Hey, Paul Ingridson. We're talking painting. We're talking painting specifically from the Boston School, and I'm back to picking up Margie's question. I'm going to read Margie's question to you. You're going to see it on the screen. But she does something that I find not unusual when you're trying to figure painting out. And that is, I don't know if the word is complexify, but combine things. And one of the things I've learned over time studying anything is the expression today is to unpack them. In other words, to break them up into components that are manageable, and make sure you don't confuse two or three with two or three with each other. So, but Margie's question is this. I'm going to read it to you. She says you've mentioned how we should visualize the subject as a finished painting. So you have that in your mind. I've suggested that people need to be able to visualize the subject as a finished painting. That's what she's saying. And then she says, I have a difficult time with that. How do you recommend a look and imagine a finished painting? So she wants to definitely discuss imagining a finished painting. Can you imagine, visualize, imagine? So she's combining those words. And so how do you recommend a look? And that's not, I'm not exactly sure whether she means how do I recommend one look, you know, how to look and imagine. But those are all valid points. Keep remembering that when you're dealing with this kind of question, you're talking to an impressionist. And I think you'll find that most people, say for example, Gerard or Leighton or any of those guys, as far as the finish of their paintings is concerned, you get the same thing every single time. I mean, they knew exactly to what degree they were going to finish the painting. Doesn't mean that they would have been painting one picture the same color as the next, which some people did. I mean, it's like, for example, Millet is an example of a painter whose basic color scheme doesn't seem to change very much from one painting to the next. And that's a ridiculous overstatement, but in so many of his figurative works that are based on memory, and where he's painting out of his head, he resorts to some very, very curiously similar things to make it a color scheme. And I don't mean to get into that right now, but we're not talking about that. We're talking as impressionists, and your job is actually, and this is in quoting a non-impressionist, an imaginative painter, and he says you have to be able to preconceive, right? And he's talking about the idea of preconceiving. Now, it doesn't mean you come in with a preconceived idea. It means for impressionists, it means you come in as an impressionist and you look at the thing, and now you're going to sit there and look until you preconceive, until you have a grasp. And this is what takes a lot of imagination. You actually have to have this sense of the thing that you can say, you know, I think I'll recognize that when I see it. I'm pretty sure I'll recognize that when I see it. Yeah. It always reminds me, it always reminds me of my dad when he was in his Alzheimer's and toward the end of his life. And I remember coming to the house and I didn't know he had the problem yet. And I walked up and he smiled at me with a smile I'd never seen him before, actually. And I was very gratified to see him smiling at me. And he said, I think I know that guy. And but it's very much like that. You need to get into your mind that you believe enough of it, enough of an awareness and a sense of the thing, so that you'll keep pursuing and pursuing it. As you know, and knowing that that's still not it, but you have to have a sense of the thing. Does that mean you've got a photographic memory or anything like that? Not even a little bit. No, it's different from that. So if you have a figure, it's an example of a figure standing before you when you have to do a figure drawing. The figure has a gesture. It's a complex series of angles, a whole bunch of things in combination, but we still call it a gesture. And you have to preconceive that gesture. You have to look at it until you sort of rather own that gesture in your mind. If you actually want to achieve that gesture. I mean, there are methods and devices for transfer and measuring, stuff like that. And I always laugh when somebody says, and it all came out okay. Well, it doesn't just come out okay. You have to have an idea of the thing fixed in your mind and eye, or it doesn't just come out okay. Or as Ang says, your shapes around all day long. I think that's a pretty important thing to know, though, that we're not having a photographic memory of it. And you're not imagining it. You look and you let it in. You let it saturate your soul in some way, so that you can then look up and say, all right, I'm going to go for it. And you're beginning, and I believe I'll recognize this as I get close. And then your job is to go pursue the relationships of things in that approach. One of the great values of a Boston school start is how much information they put down that summarizes the essential beauty of the thing. That's far different from the pain. I remember working with the Glacial. We'd be 30 days into a portrait. I remember specifically saying, Paul, you're 30 days into this portrait, and you still don't have any idea whether it's a good picture or not. And you can pick on me for being a 2-year student or something or other, but the point is, I found that really frustrating and not necessary. Once you get to the Boston School, these guys are saying on the first day, this is going to be worth pursuing, this is worth finishing. All the data's there from a great summary statement. It's a summing up. Well, to have made a great summary statement implies a couple things, but one of them is to have had a concept in your mind of the thing. And that's the difficulty. And how to do it better, I don't know if I can even tell you how. I would suggest that when you're trying to understand, you're trying to get it into yourself, that you look at the thing whole, look at it as a whole. look at it, try to see it as if we're already a finished painting. And that look at it as if it were already a finished painting. Now, I would suggest you blur your eyes a little bit, not blur them to the point they lose the color, but just defocus your eyes. That's a better term. And just put them in an A-focused mindset. So you're taking the thing as a whole, not losing color quality. And imagining it framed. And try to let that set in your imagination for a while. Try to let that settle into your imagination. And that's one of the ways of getting it there, getting to the point of thinking, I think I'll recognize that. So let's see if I can pick up and make sure I've not lost the straw here. So how do you recommend to look? So I've given you that, and imagine a finished painting. So the question is, now you're at the end of the painting, you shouldn't have to imagine a finished painting anymore. You should actually be looking at your own painting whole and saying, looking at it and saying, is that it yet? Is that doing what I thought of as the essential beauty? What tends to happen if you're raised in sort of a realist background, which a bunch of my students were by me, in that Gamble background, was that there was nothing going on except beauty. Keep on pushing through, as Gamble would say, until the whole thing was moved up to the nth degree. It would look like a Paxton. And I would find myself often defeating the most serious beauties in color, for example, by that pursuit. And partially that's just a skill problem, but mostly it's not just a skill problem. There is an essential beauty to what you're looking at, a primary beauty, a first beauty, that when you've achieved it, you've achieved enough. In fact, you've achieved, you might say, the one requirement of a painting, and that is to make a point. Not to make every point, not to be all things to all men in all pictures, but to make a single point. I remember writing letters to the editor in the old days. I've always been a sort of a politically minded person on some level, and I wrote letters to the editors, and I would usually throw in 3 or 4 important things, and before you know it, nobody can understand what I was talking about, which point to you to be concerned about. And I learned to make a single point and leave. And I think painting is very much the same way. What's your point? So if you've seen a beauty, what is it? Is this essential? Is this thing essentially in the color of light, or is it essentially in the form of the shoe making? That doesn't mean you're going to do bad things in those other ways. You have to be confident in all the other ways, no matter which fit fits. So it's not like you get out of that. But if your idea of a finish is the same every time, you'll be like Paxton. But if your idea of a finish is when you found what the essential beauty is, you're going to leave. It'll be like those various days where Benson resides. He's different one day from the next because he's got his essential beauty and he's left. There's a nice example of that, a really, really nice example of that is The Blue Cup by Joseph Aquino. This guy could draw it, as well as any of the Boston schools, to the point where it was clear that Gamble felt that he was superior to Paxton in draftsmanship. And it was clear in our conversations. Other people might want to dispute that, but that's the nature of those conversations. And that's the Gamble was actually rather intimidated by it. But the thing is, in the Blue Cup, you'll see him wall. I think the passage where the Blue Cup itself is, there are all sorts of areas throughout the entire figure. There's these disappearing acts continually going on. The guy is not, as Gamble would describe it, pushing through. Now, Paxton, you'll find plenty of nice lost areas and that sort of thing. But Gamble had, Paxton had this sort of almost a moral requirement in his brain, if it doesn't, if it's not good this way, this way, this way, this way, and this way, let's say if it's not worked up, never mind good. If it's not worked up in all these different ways, then you're not a competent painter. You have to bring all these qualities every time to a painting. And that's simply not the case. And that's the view I bring to this. So hopefully that helps a little bit with Margie's question there. And then they're finishing the question of how you know where you want to be, and it's everything got to do with what you aimed at. If you didn't see it, if you didn't say, look, now there's the magic in this thing, and then sit there and get your head around it, and know which kind of poem you're going to write. Is it going to be a limerick? Is it going to be an epic? Is it going to be... If you didn't know that, of course you won't know when you're finished. But get your head around the essential beauty and try to get in and get out. I always tell students, try to see what you can get away with. This isn't a moral question. Gamble is good to do. This isn't a question of right and wrong. And it's not a question of this method or that method. Gamble himself would admit to that and say it. But it's actually a question of what's your purpose? Get in, achieve it. Bring the beauty. And don't bring 10 other things that prove your genius. This isn't about you. This is about drawing forth the beauty as an impression. So I'm drawing forth the beauty. When you achieve that, get your sight into your voice. Walk away. But you got to know what that is from the very beginning. You have to have an idea of the essential beauty. And know when to back off. So I'll leave it at that for now. So thank you, Margie, for that question. Comment if you want to get further conversation about it. I was told by my producer to get the word share, like, comment, or subscribe. We're trying to go to the point of looking for subscribers, and that would be nice. So I guess Patreon is the likely place we're heading. So all right. Now, one of the things that happens, this question came just by email. This is from a student from a long time ago. And she's asking questions about, especially about something called window shading versus spot, painting by the spot. And that's a pretty big question. That's a pretty big deal in our way of working. Hale, in the book on veneer, is talking about painting by the spot specifically. And I believe it's even referenced in by anybody who's thinking impressionistically. There's always this conversation about painting by the spot. And literally, the conversation goes again, and I've referred to this before, but you'll hear it more than once from me, and that is the idea of being all over the place at once in the start is a classic aphorism of the Boston School. You have to be all over the place at once in the start. The start, on the other hand, also, by the way, which is something that's achieved in one day or not much more than one day, quality start has the essential data of the painting. It has the great forms, the great color relationships, the visual order of the effects, the drawing, the proportions, the great gestural things, placement on the page, the thing is a good composition, placement-wise. So those things are all inherent in a good composition by a Boston School painter, by a person who thinks that way, who's a direct painter, and is setting up his painting in the start so you can actually say, yes, this is going to be worth pursuing, right, to some greater degree of excellence. To pushing it, as it were, but not pushing it in the sense of pushing it to that closed finish in the same sense as a Paxton. But that whole picture in your mind, if you picture that, blah, 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 that's different from the idea of window shading as I understand that word. And that word might be used differently by other people, but there are people who will essentially start in an area and finish that area, and then start and finish the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Some people start, say, with an eye or a nose. Other people start, and I think I read somewhere Greg talking about starting up in the left corner of the picture, and then working his way down to the right corner, because he was right-handed or whatever, and so it wasn't going to dirty up his whatever. He must have had a preliminary drawing, if I remember right. There was some sort of a preliminary drawing. And then worked literally drawing exactly what he saw, section by section, and that's window shading. You're literally drawing down this thing, like pulling the window shade down and opening the window. And it's one of those things that no impressionist in the right mind would do, because there's no discussion about the note up in the left corner talking to the note in the right corner. There's no discussion like that. It's just a presumed way of handling the world in front of you. Those guys typically are still working, the brigadiers are still working with the idea of painting nature in front of you. But and Gamble took that to be Impressionism, just painting whatever's sitting there in front of you to be Impressionism. It's not Impressionism in the same sense as that person who's actually looking for where the music lies in a great distributed field of color, who will do whatever it takes to be here, then again to be there, and to be everywhere, and working these associations, these relationships. That's a different world of impressionist work. There's a presumption about the other type that's the painting is a lot more like fool the eye painting, where there's a presumption about literally painting, as it were, realism. And so you can paint realistically right across it. And roughly speaking, probably plausibly look, what sort of hang together. But it's hanging together primarily because you're working the same way across it. Where an impressionist is working all over the place at once. And Paxton said at one point, he said, if you have a color note in your brush, go look around and see what else you can put in the painting. You know, make sure you distribute that note. Now that's a different kind of a mindset.